How's it going, American History 2 students? This is Mr. Bell coming at you with some enrichment education. We've been asked to provide content for you that doesn't count as a grade but is new information post the end of school. So while most of y'all have summer on your mind and may never look at this, it's available if you want to participate in the enrichment education. All it's going to be is me finishing the American History 2 notes, and you can find this on my YouTube page. From now until YouTube gets deleted, I'll leave it up there as a resource. If you even want to come back and look at some of this stuff when you're in college or you're in other classes, feel free. But we're going to start with 7.5, known as the New World Order, meaning we're post the Cold War. The Soviet Union has fallen. Most of Europe is free from, in fact, all of Europe is free from Russia's grip. And Bush 41, the first Bush that will be president, who is Reagan's vice president, has become president of the United States. I'm not going to go as in-depth on these as I did the normal video notes, since this is considered extra material, enrichment education, but I'm trying to get the main points across. One of the big events that kicked off the Bush presidency was the Tiananmen Square protest. Tiananmen Square is like Times Square is to us. Times Square in New York, a big touristy destination. Tiananmen Square in China is that to them. There were several student protesters that grew by the thousands, in which they spoke out against the communism that had plagued China since Mao, and they asked for freedom and democracy. The Chinese military went in and killed most of the protesters on TV. These horrific images spread across the nation, and the United States was criticized for not, and other Western nations, for not doing anything to stop the bloodshed. But then again, that would have probably kicked off a World War III when we had just avoided that with Russia. Bush 41 declared a war on drugs, and he did something pretty unique. He sent in the military to take out Manuel Noriega. He's the largest drug trafficker of, it was cocaine and heroin mainly into the United States via Panama. Bush said that this was an act of war. He had declared a formal war on drugs, so therefore he considered Noriega to be an enemy of the state. He sent the U.S. military into Panama. They captured Noriega, brought him back here. He stood trial and was sentenced to life in prison. He was El Chapo before El Chapo. One of probably the defining event of the Bush 41 presidency was the Persian Gulf War, or the first Iraq War, since his son would, coincidentally enough, have a second Iraq War. What happened was dictator Saddam Hussein in Iraq, who craved power, money. He was a Muslim, but he wasn't an Islamic extremist. I don't think you'd ever describe him that way. He wanted power and money, and he was the most brutal and powerful dictator in the Middle East. The only thing that could give him more power is to control more oil. So even after he was warned not to do so, he had invaded Kuwait to take over their oil fields, which would give him control of a majority of the Middle East oil, which would be problematic for the Western countries. Bush 41 put together an international coalition to go in and take Saddam Hussein out and remove him from power. Now, it wasn't like he did this one thing and we decided to send troops in. This comes not shortly after he had used chemical weapons on his own people just to see if they worked. I have Saddam and Saddam. Okay, it's not actually a misspelling. Saddam is how it's spelled. That's the proper name. Saddam is how the Bushes, especially Bush 43, would actually pronounce the name. So he invades Kuwait. Bush 41 builds an international coalition, sends in the U.S. military to drive him back out of Kuwait, and he has a decision. He actually has the opportunity to give the green light for the military to kill Saddam Hussein. He decides not to do so. He gets criticized by many in the United States for not wiping out this brutal dictator, but he argues that it would create instability in the region, and while he is a terrible guy, he's not an Islamic extremist or religious fanatic. On the way out, though, a lot of the Iraqi guard burn several of the oil fields, and it causes millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, in losses. It's not a massive death toll. You see only 300 coalition soldiers die. I think it was almost close to 180 nations had at least a few troops on the ground. This was a worldwide effort. It's one of the best international coalitions ever put together. Bush 41 was great at that kind of thing. Here you see a map of the Persian Gulf War. You see Saddam Hussein goes from Iraq here. The capital of Iraq is Baghdad, and he invades Kuwait. He's driven back out. Bush 41 had a pretty successful presidency, so you figure he would go coast to re-election. We've covered this stuff with Reagan, so I'm not going to hit that here. He kind of rode Reagan's coattails, his popularity, to his own presidency, but what really messes Bush up when it comes to his re-election bid in 92, because he was elected at first in 88, is two things. One, he promises no taxes, but after the cost of the Iraqi war, he has to raise taxes to kind of keep the budget balanced. So even after he promised no new taxes, read my lips, then he raises taxes. This guy named Ross Perot, who is a Texas oil billionaire and a conservative like Bush. Of course, you have Bill Clinton, a liberal Democrat right here. Perot jumps into this race, and he splits the Republican vote. So it was the combination of Perot jumping in, no new taxes that he had promised, and then he had unfortunately given new taxes that cost him. So he comes in, Perot takes around 12-13% of the vote, which is huge for a third-party candidate, and this allows Bill Clinton, the liberal Democrat, to become president. So what defines kind of Bush's presidency? War on crime, war on drugs. He is the one who pushes for the drinking age to be changed from 18 to 21 because of a public interest group known as MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, who tell the horror stories of their sons and daughters being killed because of underage drinking. Congress acts, they push the drinking age to 21, but what they do is, it's more of an ultimatum. They tell states because the drinking age is ultimately a state decision. They tell the states if they don't change the drinking age from 18 to 21, they're not going to receive federal funding. So therefore, all the states did it because they want that money. The AIDS crisis is something that he did a much better job with than Reagan did. Put a lot more money, time, and effort into combating the AIDS crisis. So that would be your American History 2 7.5 notes for Mr. Bell. And this is Enrichment Education, covering the highlights of Bush 41's presidency. I hope this video has helped. Of course, you can always email me at bsbell@clevelandcountyschools.org. Thank you.